What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Erica from the Classy Climb blog. I want to come back to you guys today for a second show because a lot of times we talk about problems on YouTube, but we don't talk about solutions, and we don't talk about how to make money from it. I know that crazy. This is a financial channel, and we're going to talk about one, how to make money from this situation that we're uncovering, and two, what does the next 90 to, I'd say even 6 months outlook for our country look like via the stock market, and via small business. So thank you for coming in. My co-host Diamond Dave coming in with the hot commentary. Please introduce yourself to the audience as we wait for some people to get in.
Okay, Erica, really glad to be here. Glad to connect again. So my name is Diamond Dave, also known as David W. Williams, a founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options training course. And what we're going to try to do today is kind of give you an understanding of, how you can utilize the market to put yourself in a position to be profitable. We can't guarantee anything. We can't make guarantees of your success. But we want to try to help you see the world and actually see what's going on in a different way and try to figure out when you're looking at a situation, how can you ask yourself, how can I make money off of this? How can I put myself in a position to be profitable? So you can start taking advantage of it as opposed to maybe just being alarmed or outraged by what's going on.
All right. So biggest thing I'm coming across people is, okay, Erica, you're complaining about Joe Biden, the mandates, this is going on with business. What do you see? Now, prime example why I love bringing you on, because I had a friend talk about travel stocks because, everybody was out of the airplanes. Everybody left the movie theaters. Everybody was like, oh, no. And he doubled down and invested in AMC, GameStop, of course, and in all the airlines, Delta, you name it, he invested in it. And now he's just laughing, riding the wave back up.
Yeah.
What are some things you see coming through as far as travel?
Well, what we got to try to figure out is from a travel standpoint. So we look at that like airlines, cruise lines, and also not necessarily those, also the ticket vendors. So like Expedia, things of that nature. How are they going to continue to transition into this new environment that we're going to be operating in? And then what particular regulations are they going to create to kind of safeguard their business to make sure that their customer feels safe? And at the same time, is going to allow them to continue to conduct the same amount of business that they were doing before. Because what we don't need, and what I don't think is going to be good for anybody's business in the travel sector, is to create another barrier. So already when you get on the plane, if you don't have that exemption, you got to deal with that long TSA line. What we don't need is a pandemic line. So I think that we got to start looking at ourselves and trying to figure out what are they going to create to actually make sure that we can kind of streamline this process, but also make the customer feel like they're going to be safe. And I think the businesses that can best communicate that are going to be the ones that are going to have the most amount of success. We look at the cruise lines. They had a really kind of strong push as people thought that we were coming out of it, we were going back into recovery. Then they started selling off again. One of the biggest issues is down here in the state of Florida, they're going back and forth with the governor. I think the governor is doing a little bit of, So I don't know how they're going to work that out, because my issue is that we can't, from a state of Florida standpoint, make regulations so bad against these particular businesses that they can't do business here. But at the same time, the governor doesn't want to make it feel like that they're making demands out of customers or making demands out of people that are not legal. So we got to kind of figure out how we're going to balance that out. So those are some of the things that we got to look at. But I do believe whether it's the airlines, what's going to be the cruise lines, eventually they're going to figure this out. They're not going to shut down. So if you can get in, while the stock is still relatively low, you can ride it back up because they're going to figure it out. With the cruise lines, you do have to worry about lack of liquidity, their credit issues, things of that nature. I don't think Delta's going anywhere because they're Delta. There may be some of the major airlines. So I'm very confident in them. With the cruise lines, we got to worry about liquidity issues, how much they're burning cash every 90 days without operating at full capacity. But I think eventually they're going to figure it out. And even if we get one or two cruise lines to go under, they'll probably get bought out by another cruise line and turn into a super cruise line. And it will still have the one, because that business is such a good business from a revenue standpoint. There's no way in the world you're going to get rid of it.
It's safety. I mean, I'll just tell people like this. Our family's been cruising since I was 12. And I've been to all the Caribbeans, all the islands, and then some. And I'll tell you this, we saw the same families every year. They had 6 kids. They had grandma, grandpa, everybody's together. It's like a giant hotel floating with food. Definitely. They get off the boat for a little while. They get back on the boat to safety. It's Americanized travel, but they also do it in parts of Europe. And people go over to Europe, get on the boat, go see a couple of days, get back on the boat and go on about their day. So if you guys are here, drop your city and state in the channel, on the chat. Part of why I think Joe Biden did what he did the other day is Yellen said in October, we're going towards the fall. What better way to shore up our country than to throw some cash at business owners? And the reason I say that is business owners are the people who ultimately usually are the landlords. They maybe own a food restaurant. I know one man, he started investing in more food restaurants during the pandemic because his rental properties were kind of slow. Some of them weren't paying. And so what better way to make the money move around the economy than give it to business owners? I know people hate trickle down politics, but it really does matter in these situations. So when it comes to travel, would you say, just buy or sell airlines? No.
It kind of depends on what I would want to try to figure out. Yeah, I would definitely swing trade it. I wouldn't. Let me explain this. If you believe the airline was weak before the pandemic, I'll be very hesitant about getting into it.
Okay.
But I do believe that they're going to rebound because just the way this country is set up, people like to travel by plane. When I was living in other parts of the country, if I had to come back to Florida, I always took a plane. I never drove because it just takes so long to get back and forth. I could do that same flight in one day. So, people in America, we're just really, we are used to traveling, and we're used to traveling the way we want to travel. And we're used to our travel being very convenient for us. So that's the thing, is that I don't think they're going anywhere, but we just got to try to figure out how we're going to deal with the regulations of this new reality, because I compared this to 9/11. 9/11 happened. Whether or not people believe the narrative as what was given, there were changes that took place after 9/11 that impacted travel that you just had to figure out how to deal with. So now what I know, when I was living in Atlanta, I would get to Hartsfield 3 hours ahead of time because I knew I had to get into the TSA line, and that could take sometimes 2 hours. And then in Hartsfield being such a busy airport, you may have a hard time finding somewhere to park. So you got all these issues. And I know that I got to get through that TSA line because I don't have the exemption where I could just walk through. So we got to try to figure out, from a travel standpoint, what regulations are they going to create that are going to be kind of like standard in a way of that they now have to do business that are going to impact it, so we can just get everything going back. Because the most important thing is we get the ball back rolling and we start engaging in more commerce.
For sure. Like, I think a lot of people think, oh, we're just going to be Zoom from here on out. We're not going to do business travel. The last couple of plane rides I went on, there were businessmen going to see someone in person because the account struggled without in-person conversation. Because if you're a business owner looking to save cost, you're going to start cutting costs everywhere. So now they send in these business salesmen back out to assure you of their product, to assure you of working with them, keeping the account open. I think what the pandemic, produced, unfortunately for Spirit Airlines, was to show that it really was just a Greyhound in the sky, but it was never really meant to be full all the time, right? I stick with Delta because it is the best. I'm not even joking. I did 30 flights during the pandemic. I did 50 the year before that. And I can tell you without a doubt, like, Delta, regardless of how they've been tripping with their employees, they are the best.
Yeah, I've been flying Delta, and that's very important because there was an interview right when the pandemic started. A guy owns a particular company that's like an online, I would say, meeting company. And he said because of the pandemic, their numbers blew up. But he said the downside of it is that he can't put his salespeople on the road. And he wants his salespeople out on the road, bringing in those enterprise accounts. And that's difficult to do through like a live stream because you got to get that face to face. You might have to do some networking, things of that nature. So he says the downside of this is that even though we're getting a lot of people to come on, I can't have my salespeople servicing my enterprise accounts. So that's where the big money's at.
Okay. And so with travel, healthcare. The other day when I was flying, there was a full-on doctor with a mask on, with the scrubs on, like he just left the hospital, flying on our plane. I'm like, wait a minute. Well, hold on now. Where you going, sir? Did you take a shower? Those clean scrubs? What are some things you're seeing with healthcare stocks right now?
So when I'm looking at healthcare, most definitely, I'm really looking at really not necessarily, I would say, the hospitals or the healthcare facilities. I'm really looking at the people that are manufacturing the actual remedies to the pandemic. Because what I'm starting to feel like is that they're now speaking as if this thing is going to be seasonal, is going to be something that's going to require a person having to get boosters. So then what you're going to have is a full product line that can be sold to customers that essentially what they're making is that if they make all federal employees and they also make all federal people that have contracts through the federal government, and they also make the military, then they eventually going to turn around and make all corrections, and they're going to make the whole police departments. You got this massive pool of people that every few months or every few weeks have to get a booster.
Yeah.
That's going to create a really robust product line for these people that manufacture these particular solutions. So when you're looking at a company like Moderna before the pandemic, their stock price was probably around $20. Now it's way, way, way above that. It's because, one, they just have one solution. They don't really have any other products in the market. They have some other products in the pipeline, but they got one product in the market, and that's their particular solution to the pandemic.
And they got the government contract.
And they got a government contract, and they got money from the government to build out that particular product that they not can go sell. So it's a great business opportunity for them. So they now have it's an incentive to keep everything going. So that's what we got to understand, is that this is, I think, now going to be the new kind of go-to product. And if we notice, they're not talking about flu vaccines anymore. And that used to be the thing they were telling. They just, that's for some reason, that's got wiped off the table.
It's imaginary.
So this is the new thing that they're trying to push. And now they're saying that we're going to have all these categories of people that have to now get this. And also you got to get a booster. So I will look at the particular companies that manufacture these, and also maybe look at if there's an ETF that combines all these companies in one ETF. But anybody that has to deal with solution to this particular issue, whether it's going to be manufactured of that, like the brother said, whether it's going to be testing, any kind of rapid testing, I will look at those, because they're making it seem as if this is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with from here on out.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Part of why I was interested in a cleaning company is because all these buildings had these big contracts because they needed the water to keep being flushed, tables still wiped down, sanitizing, and now they need it more so because they're having employees come back. Now, if you don't think you're the boss, with these new mandates gonna make you come up in that office, you smoking something.
Yeah.
So they're just gonna clean more often. I know, right? It disappeared. It went up and it went down. Another thing about healthcare too is the people who get the government contracts. There was a man I was sitting across at a Cardone Ventures event. He had a contract for gloves, and there wasn't latex gloves there, whatever that other type of glove is. And he literally had to produce like 55,000 of them or something, some crazy number, and it was just for one facility. And I was like, what? And what's crazy about it is he owned a liquor company. And they said, well, how do you own a liquor company in this place? He says, well, some of the same manufacturing parts and pieces, when I went to go buy them, I could use them to make gloves. Yeah. so he had this whole other part of this warehouse he converted where it's separate and it's clean and it's sterile to make gloves. And he's like, well, I'm just going to try to get more government contracts. So I just thought, people in healthcare stocks, if it's gloves, if it's products, if it's supplies, anything y'all can think of, make a list on a sheet of paper. If you go look in your doctor's office, and I know this sounds crazy, but they're not condoms, but they look like condoms and they go cover over equipment. And it's literally like a plastic sheath or whatever it's called. And, there's contracts for that. Like just everything you can think of in a doctor's office. There's somebody has a contract to make it. Someone has a contract to work on it. Yes, there's the word I'm looking for. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so it is. What about Square with people going back to work? Do you mean Zoom, or are you talking about Square, the swipe, like the payment?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll ask you, do you mean Zoom or do you mean Square?
Square.
Yeah. And with what you were talking about with the people that make those particular supplies, they may not be the biggest name companies, but they may have a great growth projection because they're going to be very much in demand. But I would do what Erica suggested. I would take a piece of paper and try to figure out what are going to be some of the essential situations in this new environment that we're going into, and what companies do I think are going to be able to take advantage of that. And it may not be the high profile companies. It may be companies that have a very, very small market cap, but they're very profitable based on how they run their company. And they can put it in a situation where they can have a great opportunity for growth based on the fact that there's going to be a lot of need. Because if you make masks, there's going to be a big need for mask companies, gloves, things of that nature. And then we're going to figure out, is this just going to be standard? So in other parts of the world, a lot of things that we're using now are standard to them, but to us, they weren't standard. They now may just become standard. I worked in healthcare for years. We never use masks unless you worked on certain units. They may make it now in healthcare. Everybody has to wear masks just as part of their daily 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. And they're already showing that children are kind of struggling with facial recognition of emotion because they're wearing masks all day. My nephew was like, I don't have a table partner. And the teacher was like, well, that's okay. She's like, does nobody want to sit beside me? And the little girl turned around and said, I'll sit beside you. So the kids are already experiencing this anxiety of like, they can't read people's faces. And I know that sounds silly, but like children need that from ages 0 to 7 is when you kind of get programmed for emotion, how things should be, how to set the tone of school, all that stuff. He said square the payment. Okay. He said a lot of people got on Square with side businesses picking up. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it still will be available depending on what their side business is. Yeah. Gig, sir. Okay, so XRP, I don't know what that is.
Okay, that's a cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Okay, so
yeah, I saw that. That UPS and Roadie app. Yeah, I saw that like I think the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they got to figure something out because Amazon's trying to get them out of here.
Yeah,
Fix something out. Fix something out.